Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
It started with my grandmother's funeral when I was 7 years old. While everyone else saw her peaceful face in that satin-lined casket, I saw something else entirely: colors bleeding from her skin like watercolors in rain, purples and blues that shouldn't exist. Yet there they were, swirling around her like a storm only I could see. My mother thought I was traumatized. She dragged me to therapists who use words like processing grief and imaginative coping mechanisms. But I knew better. I wasn't imagining anything. I was seeing what everyone else refused to acknowledge, that death has its own palette, its own terrible beauty. By 15, I was sneaking into the city morgue. Dr. Marcus Thorne, the chief pathologist, found me sketching in the viewing room at 3 in the morning. Any other man would have called security. Instead, he handed me a proper pencil and asked if I'd ever considered studying forensic art. The dead don't lie, Lucy. He told me that first night, his weathered hands guiding mine as we traced the contours of a Jane Doe's face. They show you everything: their last moments, their final thoughts, their deepest secrets. But you have to know how to listen. For 3 years, he taught me not just anatomy, but the language of death itself. How a person's final expression could reveal whether they died in peace or terror. How the positioning of fingers could tell you if they fought back. How the eyes, they hold everything. Dr. Thorne was more than a mentor. He was the father I never had, the only person who understood that my gift wasn't madness but sight. He saw how I could capture not just what the dead looked like, but what they had experienced. My paintings became his secret weapon in solving cold cases until the night everything changed. I was 22 when I painted my first prophecy. It started as a dream: a woman with auburn hair and green eyes, her mouth open in a silent scream. When I woke, my hands were already moving, mixing colors I'd never used before. Forest green with flecks of gold for her terrified eyes. Crimson, touched with black for the blood pooling beneath her. 3 days later, they found her body in Riverside Park, exactly as I'd painted her. The police came, of course. They wanted to know how I'd known, where I'd been, who I'd talked to. But how do you explain to someone that you dreamed a death before it happened? How do you tell them that the dead whisper their stories to you in your sleep? Dr. Thorne tried to protect me. He vouched for my character, explained my work with the morgue, insisted I was helping solve crimes, not committing them. But I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes too. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, like he was seeing me for the first time. That's when I started keeping the painting secret. I'd dream, I'd paint, and then I'd wait. Wait for the news reports, the police sirens, the confirmation that another one of my visions had come true. Each time, I told myself I was just documenting what was already written in the stars. I wasn't causing anything. I was just witnessing. But the visions grew stronger, more frequent. And with them came a terrible hunger I couldn't name. By 25, I was exhibiting in the most prestigious galleries in the city. Critics called my work haunting and unnervingly realistic. They said I captured something essential about the human condition, the moment when life transforms into memory, if only they knew. I'd learned to paint the living too, of course. Commission work kept me fed and housed. But those paintings felt hollow, incomplete, like trying to capture lightning in a bottle when all you had was a jar of ash. The real art happened in the small hours of the night when the visions came. I'd wake with paint under my fingernails and a new canvas on my easel, always depicting someone I'd never met, but somehow knew intimately. Their fears, their secrets, their final moments, all of it flowing through my brush like blood through veins. The whispers started at my exhibitions. People would study my work too closely, lean in to examine details that shouldn't be there. A wedding ring on the wrong finger, a scar that looked too real. eyes that seemed to follow you around the room with an expression of absolute terror. They say she paints from real corpses. I heard one woman whisper at my show last week. I heard she sleeps with them. Let them talk. Let them wonder. They'll never understand that I don't choose my subjects. They choose me. That's when he arrived. Agent Daniel Cross, FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. 6 feet of coiled intensity in a $1,000 suit, with eyes like storm clouds and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He'd been tracking me for months, I learned later, following the trail of my paintings and the bodies that followed, building a case that existed only in his mind but felt real enough to bring him to my doorstep. The night of my latest exhibition, I felt his gaze like a physical weight. He stood in the shadows, studying not my art but me, watching how I moved, how I breathed, how I touched the frames of my paintings like they were lovers' faces. Most people looked at my work and saw technique, composition, color theory. He looked and saw evidence. When he finally introduced himself, his voice was like gravel wrapped in silk. Lucy Blackthorn, I'm Agent Cross. I'd like to ask you some questions about your work. I invited him back to my studio. Why not? I was curious about him too. There was something different about Agent Cross, something that made my fingertips tingle and my vision blur around the edges. When I looked at him, I didn't see just a living man. I saw layers past, present, and future all bleeding together, like paint on wet canvas, and underneath it all, I saw death. His death, beautiful and terrible and inevitable. My studio at night is a different creature entirely. Shadows pull in the corners like spilled ink, and the moonlight streaming through. The skylights turns everything blue-silver, ethereal. This is where I do my real work, where the visions come alive under my brush. Agent Cross paced between my easels like a caged animal, his case file clutched in white-knuckled hands. Crime scene photos spilled across my work table, all women, all bearing the distinctive mark of violent death, all bearing an uncanny resemblance to subjects I'd painted days or weeks before their murders. You painted her 3 days before she was killed, he said, holding up a photo of my latest vision. Sarah Chen, 28, found strangled in her apartment. In my painting, she wore the same blue dress, the same terrified expression, the same defensive wounds on her hands. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, letting the amber liquid burn away the chill that always followed my visions. I dream about the dead agent. Doesn't mean I create them. He stepped closer and I could smell his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and smoke. Something that reminded me of funeral pyres and autumn leaves. Then why do all your subjects end up on my morgue slabs? Such a simple question, such a complicated answer. I moved to my latest work in progress, a portrait I'd started the night before. The subject was a man in his 30s with storm cloud, eyes and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. As I spoke, I let my fingers trail over the canvas, blending the oils still wet from the night's work. Maybe you should stay the night, I whispered, not looking at him. See for yourself, ... how I work. I heard his breath catch, felt the temperature in the room shift as something electric passed between us. This was new territory for both of us, the hunter and the hunted, circling each other in a dance as old as time itself. But I was already seeing how this story would end. An Agent Cross, he was about to become my masterpiece. When darkness fell completely, I began to paint. Not the commission work or the gallery pieces, but the real art, the visions that came to me in dreams and demanded to be born in oils and canvas. Agent Cross watched from the shadows, his breathing shallow, his hands clenched into fists. I could feel his eyes on me as I worked, cataloging every movement, every stroke, every moment when I paused to listen to whispers only I could hear. Most men fear death, I told him as I mixed colors that shouldn't exist, the gray-green of drowning, the purple-black of strangulation, the yellow-white of terror. But you are different, aren't you? You're aroused by it? He didn't deny it, couldn't deny it. I could see it in the way his pupils dilated when I described the visions, the way his pulse quickened when I spoke of the moment life becomes. Memory. I was recreating the dead man's face from memory, every stroke precise, almost intimate. A John Doe found in the river 3 days ago, his features preserved by the cold water, his eyes still wide with the shock of his final moment. You want to know my secret? I leaned close enough that my breath ghosted across his ear. It's not about capturing death. It's about feeling it. My hand found his thigh, and I felt the tremor that ran through him. He was losing control, the professional mask slipping to reveal something raw and hungry underneath. That's when I told him about Dr. Thorne, about the nights in the morgue, learning to read the language of the dead, about the first time I touched a corpse and felt the echo of their final moments flow through my fingertips like electricity. The dead don't lie, Lucy. I repeated his words, my voice dropping to a whisper. They show you everything. Agent Cross's restraint finally snapped. He pinned me against the wet canvas, paint smearing across my back as his mouth crashed onto mine. The kiss was hungry, desperate, tasting of bourbon and damnation. Tell me you're not involved, he growled against my lips. I laughed, the sound echoing off the studio walls like broken glass. Or what? You'll handcuff me? But even as we lost ourselves in each other, I was thinking about the painting behind us. The one I'd started the night before, the one that showed Agent Cross as he would be, not alive and breathing and burning with desire, but still and silent and beautiful in death. The visions never lied. They only showed me what was already written in the stars. I woke alone as I always do, the studio bathed in the gray light of dawn. Agent Cross was gone, but his presence lingered in the rumpled sheets, the empty bourbon, glass, the faint scent of cedar and smoke that clung to my skin. The portrait of him was finished. I must have worked on it while he slept, but something was wrong. The eyes I'd painted were lifeless, glassy, staring at nothing. The mouth was slack, the skin pale with that particular grayish tint that only comes after the heart stops beating. I'd painted him as he would be, not as he was. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Another body found face preserved like a painting. The victim was Dr. Marcus Thorne. For the first time in years, I felt something crack inside my chest. Dr. Thorne, my mentor, my protector, the only person who had ever truly understood what I was. Found dead in his home office, his face peaceful, his hands folded as if he'd simply chosen to sleep. But I knew better. I knew because I'd painted him weeks ago, in a vision so clear it felt like memory. I'd seen him in his final moments, not struggling or fighting, but smiling. Smiling as he looked at something, someone he recognized. The pieces clicked into place with terrible clarity. I wasn't just painting the dead. I was painting the order of their deaths. The sequence, the timing, the method. Someone was using my visions as a roadmap, following the path I unconsciously laid out in oils and canvas. But who? And why? I moved through my studio like a ghost, touching canvases I'd completed over the past year. Sarah Chun, Marcus Thorne. A homeless man found under the bridge. A socialite discovered in her penthouse. All of them painted before their deaths. All of them perfect matches for the crime scene photos I'd seen in Agent Cross's file. That's when I saw it. A canvas I didn't remember painting tucked behind the others like a secret shame. It was a self-portrait, but not as I appeared in life. My throat was slit, my eyes closed, my mouth curved in a serene smile. Blood pooled beneath me like spilled wine, and my hands were folded over my chest as if I was sleeping. At the bottom of the canvas, in handwriting that wasn't mine, were the words, the final piece, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, familiar. You see now, don't you? Agent Cross's voice was different, now softer, almost loving. I don't paint the dead ... I become them. I turned, and for the first time in my life, I truly saw him. Not as he appeared to the world, but as he really was. The hunger in his eyes matched my own, but where mine was passive, waiting for visions to come, his was active, predatory. You've been following my paintings, I said. It wasn't a question. Creating them, he corrected. You dream them, I make them real. We're partners, Lucy, two halves of the same dark gift. He stepped closer, and I could see the blood under his fingernails, the satisfaction in his smile. Dr. Thorne figured it out first, he continued. Started asking questions about the FBI agent who kept requesting access to your work. Had to be dealt with before he could warn you. You killed him. The words came out flat, emotionless. I was beyond shock now, beyond fear. This was simply another revelation, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. I killed them all, every single person you painted in your visions. I made your art come alive, Lucy. I made it real. He reached out to touch my face, and I didn't pull away. His fingers were warm, gentle, almost reverent. But this one, he gestured to the self-portrait, this one is different. This one you painted while you were awake. You knew, didn't you? Somewhere deep down, you knew what I was. I had known. From the moment I first saw him in the gallery, I'd known he was different. I'd just been too fascinated to care. Why? I asked. Because you're the only one who truly sees me, he said. The only one who understands what I am. And because every masterpiece deserves a perfect ending. He pulled out a knife, not FBI issue, but something older, more personal. The blade caught the morning light and threw it back in fragments, like a broken mirror. I've been saving this moment, he whispered. The greatest work of art we'll ever create together. I looked at the knife, then at the self-portrait, then back at Agent Cross. In his eyes, I saw the same hunger that had driven me to paint the dead, the same terrible need to capture beauty in its most fragile form. You're wrong about one thing, I said quietly. What's that? I don't just paint the dead. I smiled and felt something shift in the air between us. I become them. The knife was in my hand before he could react. I'd been dreaming of this moment for weeks, painting it in my mind long before I put brush to canvas. The vision was crystal clear, not of my death, but of his. Agent Cross's eyes widened as the blade slid between his ribs, finding his heart. With the precision of someone who had studied anatomy for years. He made it sound like surprise, like recognition, like completion. How? He gasped. The same way I knew about all the others, I whispered as he sank to his knees. The visions don't just show me random deaths, Daniel. They show me the deaths that matter, the ones that need to happen. He was beautiful in death, just as I'd always known he would be. The storm cloud eyes finally at peace, the mouth that had forgotten how to smile now curved in something like contentment. I held him as he died, feeling the moment when life became memory, when breath became silence, when the man became the art. They found me 3 days later, sitting beside his body, adding the final touches to a new canvas. This one showed Agent Cross as he really was not the hunter, but the hunted. Not the killer, but the killed. The FBI came in force, expecting to find a crime scene. Instead, they found a gallery. Every wall covered with paintings of the dead, each one a perfect match for a victim in their files. And in the center of it all met the artist who had finally learned to paint from life instead of death. They want to know how I knew. How I predicted the murders, how I knew details that were never released to the public, how I managed to paint. Agent Cross's death 3 days before it happened. I tell them the truth, but they don't believe me. They can't understand that some people are born with the ability to see beyond the veil. to witness the moments when life transforms into memory. They think I'm insane. They think I'm a killer. They think I'm a monster. Maybe they're right. But I know something they don't. As I sit in the cell, waiting for trial, I can feel the vision starting again. New faces, new deaths, new masterpieces waiting to be born. The dead are calling to me, and I'm finally ready to answer. Still think this was just a lesson, Agent? The real lesson is this. We are all canvases waiting for the artist to complete us. Some are painted in joy, others in sorrow. Some in love, others in fear. But we are all eventually painted in death. And I am the artist who makes it beautiful.